Good afternoon, Plexers, fellow Plexers. I'm back with the part 2 video for the TRaSH guide setup, and I have all my notes ready now. I had to work it up for Radarr and Lidarr to get those containers going with Portainer. But I should have been prepped earlier to help everybody with a time zone issue. You can use this database here from Wikipedia to find the closest city to use for your time zone. So you see how if you're in America, which would be North, Central, or South America, you can grab one of these. So let's go down. If I was in Detroit, I just have to copy that, and I would paste this here instead. So it's pretty easy. And they do use an underscore if there's a space. So say you were in Indiana Tell City. I don't know where the heck that is. You just copy it from Wikipedia and paste it into these scripts I'm using. Pretty easy. So that'll be in the description also. All right, so we left off needing to install Sonarr, Radarr, and Lidarr. So let's get back to Portainer. All right, so we're still in the stacks. And what we have to do is create structure for Sonarr. And again, it will be in the description. We need to create a Sonarr subfolder with a subfolder of config in our Docker shared media folder. And we can do that directly in the Synology NAS or a local file manager connected to the Synology NAS. So if I was going to do this one this way, I'd go to File Station, the Docker container, I'd create a folder. I'd highlight that folder, hit create folder, and then I need config. Oh, that didn't work. I guess I need to do it this way. Now I can create the config. Okay, so that's set up. I just prefer to do it with my local file manager. So that's how I'll do the next two containers. So you can copy this from the description. Oh, let's talk about this again. So I have to have that folder structure that I created, and this structure has to also be present. So this is using my shared media folder name, my TV library sort folder, and that will give the container access to everything in that structure. And then the container also needs access to my sabnzbd complete structure, which is also in the media shared folder. All right, so let's copy all of this. And the port to access it is going to be 8989. So let's create a stack for Sonarr. Paste this in here. And we will just see what happens by deploying the stack. And again, you can't switch away from this page until you get a successful comment. So that's now running. It's starting up. Let's refresh it. While that's going, This is the IP address to access it from my Synology NAS. You simply will switch to your own IP address with the same port number. And we'll wait until it starts up. And I'm still deleting my original Plex container. I guess I'll have to go into DSM and nuke that. All right, Sonarr's still starting up, so let me do something useful. Let me go into File Station, Docker. I really confuse things by highlighting that, action, delete. I guess that's not happening because I was already doing it from my file manager. Well, maybe it's gone. Let's see if we're ready to rock and roll here. Okay, so we're ready for Sonarr. Let's paste that URL into a new window. And we're into Sonarr, ready for you to configure. And again, I'm not going to show any of the configuration. The TRaSH Guides has, the TRaSH Guides is the excellent guide for that. And I'm worried about YouTube strikes, so I don't really want to show these things in action, but I don't mind showing you how to get the containers going under a Synology NAS. So let's move on to Radarr. So I'm going to highlight all of this. And I need to create a Radarr subfolder with a config subfolder there. And I'll use my local file browser to do it. Okay, and I didn't talk about this with Sonarr. These are just, I'm taken from the Marius Hosting website, but his guides aren't really cool because of the folder structure. He has both of these lines using the shared folder of the Docker container itself, which breaks atomic moves with your Plex media in its own shared folder. So I'm not even making a judgment call of whether they should or shouldn't be in the container. I don't really think they should be. But to not have everything in your shared media folder, your Plex media, and the media that's coming in from these services, anything besides that breaks the atomic moves, and the atomic moves are so efficient. It doesn't really matter which way you think is better. You just want to ensure the atomic moves happen. Okay, so we'll click this little thing. We'll go to stacks, add stack, name it Radarr, paste this in, and it's pretty easy, isn't it? Deploy stack, and we'll wait to see if it's successful. While we're waiting, again, change this to your IP address with that port number. Success. Now we can go back to Chrome. Well, hold on. We may not be able to go back to Chrome. Let's go to containers. Radarr's still starting. All right, let's test this. Let's see what happens if we try to access it before it's started up. Nada, nothing. So you notice these Star app services, they take a little bit longer to start up. When they're fully configured and you click on maybe a bookmark, or I use Chrome apps, they take a while to start up. And I don't mind showing one of mine. It's just not a fast starter. Okay, now it's started there. So I'll come back to that. So if I go to this, I should be able to refresh it, and we've got Radarr. So Radarr is enabled. Now on to Lidarr, but my interface opened up. And well, again, I'm not going to show the config really. I'll go into settings a tiny bit, and I'll go to media management and just let you know that this, what I have, is not by default. Maybe I'll add these to the descriptions too. This is how I name an episode. Well, it creates the season folder title with the year. This is being pulled from TVDB, which is why it's important to set your episode ordering to TVDB globally for your TV show library. And it creates the season episode coding. It adds the episode name. And just like my filebot expression, in brackets, it adds some media description to it. Now you do have to go down to the multi-episode style and change this away from the default, which I think is extend down to prefix range to be Plex compliant. But I wanted to show you down at the bottom multiple folders. So if I was going to add a new TV show, let me just do something I have already. When you do that, you click search. And then when you click on it, the last show I added has the path that's going to be used. You see it's sonarrmedia, which is the alias for my Plex shared media folder and my TV-library subfolder. I can switch to the kids TV show library and pull this show into that structure. Wherever you left it last is where it's going to be for the next show. But it's all pretty cool. All right, so let's get Lidarr running now. So we'll get this set up back for the stacks. We'll bring our cheat sheet in. And what we need to do is we need to create this structure in the Docker structure. The Docker shared folder. So I will create the Lidarr folder or subfolder, and I will do the config. So now we've got Docker, Lidarr config, just as we need it. So this is where you have to check if you're setting up any other container besides these. The physical structure for all of these paths has to actually exist. The container won't create it, it will just use it. So we'll copy this, and again, I was going to show you Amarius hosted. Let me do that now. And I give his site a lot of credit. I just don't think he's actually got these services running himself. Otherwise, this wouldn't be the way it is. So let's do this. Okay, so he's got his config path last. Exactly what I'm using. Now this structure is real. His first volume or only volume, and then Docker with a subfolder of Lidarr, with a subfolder of music, with the alias of music. Well, that's a library folder inside the Docker shared folder. So I know that just won't make sense to anybody, right? Well, then for the acquisitions, the real structure is the volume 1, the Docker sub or the Docker shared folder again. Now we're still in the Lidarr folder that's created, and then there's a download subfolder. So somehow sabnzbd is directing incoming files to this subfolder, but when he set sob up, his example was for a movie library acquisition, and just you see how none of it makes too much sense. But if we go back to my structure, this is what's common between all of these containers. This line here. It's the same for Lidarr. It's the same for Radarr. And it's the same for Sonarr. And then each one points to its own unique Plex library structure of where the media is going once it's acquired and processed. And then they all have their unique area for their config files, all in the Docker shared folder. So that is what we need for Lidarr. And again, if you adjust your folder structure for your media, it's got to be reflected there. So we'll go back to stacks, add a new stack, call it Lidarr, paste in our good jazz here, and just hit deploy the stack. And we will wait for the successful notification. So if you've come this far through the first video and now the second one, and you haven't listened to me before, I am not a pro YouTuber. I'm just a Plex enthusiast. I'm a Synology NAS enthusiast. And as of late, I'm an Unraid enthusiast. The way I use it is a Docker host only, which is where my Plex container is. So we've got all successes here. Let's switch back to the container view. And we do have to wait for it to start up. So let me get the address, the web address. And again, change this to your own IP address for your Synology NAS. So we're already healthy. Let's find Chrome. And we've got Lidarr set up. So we've got Lidarr installed, and it's up to all of you fine folks to get this set up. But really, this is where you go. You can go here, trashguides.info, and learn how to set all these programs up with each other. Now, all of this is for someone using a Usenet/indexer setup. I have no idea how to make any of this work with a torrent setup. But someplace, let's see, there's a couple different ways to get to the trash guides. So they have information for Synology, NAS. It'll help walk you through some things too if you're confused with what I'm saying. They have it for Unraid, Windows, a native, I'm not quite sure what that means, plain Docker, which could be under, you know, Windows, Mac, or Linux. But the most important thing is, let's see, this is not the place. where do they talk about atomic moves? Instant moves, also known as atomic moves. So this is their suggested structure, which once you look at it, it's not really too much different from mine. I have a shared media folder called media and not data. They have a subfolder in that shared data folder called media, and they're breaking it up by books, movies, music, and TV. Well, they don't really explain how to pull information from multiple libraries like I've shown in these two videos just briefly. So here's a torrent setup in that same shared data folder. And well, here's the torrent storage, and here's the Usenet storage. I'm not doing any of that. I just have a sob folder with the 3 subfolders in it. All acquired media goes into the complete subfolder of the sob folder. And I don't run Radarr, I run Sonarr and Lidarr. It just sees what comes in, and Lidarr knows what music is. Sonarr knows what episodes are, and I assume Radarr will know what movies are. And I can just use that one sob/complete structure to do everything with. So basically, this is about it. Feel free to ask questions, but I'm just not comfortable doing a full configuration video of these programs on YouTube. I don't want to risk a copyright strike, and I wasn't even sure if I'd ever do a video like this. But if it's helpful to you, let me know, and happy plexing and happy Friday.